Welcome to episode 17 of They Might Be Self-Aware. I am Hunter Powers, joined by none other than...
the one, the only, Daniel Bishop.
Daniel Bishop is in the house. What are we talking about today, Daniel?
Well, we're going to be talking about free self-driving cars.
And maybe some DIY training data.
Some ooey gooey gluey pizza.
How do we know if this AI is sentient?
Sam Altman's safety circus.
And distributing the AI load. All of that is up next on...
They might be self-aware.
Hello, Hunter.
Hello, Daniel.
How are you?
I think I'm doing pretty well.
Me too. I got something for free today.
Oh, what did
So
you
I'm
get
feeling
for
pretty
free?
good.
No one gives me anything for free.
Well, it's Tesla that gave me something for free, which I didn't really expect. That was something that I'd ever be saying, but they did.
Uncle Elon?
Uncle Elon sent me a gift-wrapped little basket. Latest update to my car. I have a Model 3. For those who either don't know or don't remember, I don't know if I've spoken about it on the podcast yet.
I think you mentioned it. We talked about training Moistral on it in the past.
Oh, okay, great. So, I've got this car, right? And Uncle Elon, with the latest update, sent over a gift-wrapped 30 days of FSD supervised. I don't think they're actually calling it full self-driving. It's just FSD, and you know what it stands for. And then parentheses... supervised, as in I'm supposed to supervise it while it does that. There was a big thing that comes up.
So you didn't pay for the full self-driving package when you got it?
That's right. I actually did, whenever they said, hey, you can pay for like a month, a year ago, something like that, I gave it a try. Wasn't a huge fan.
I've heard unless you're going to keep
janky.
the car for like a really long time, you can just do it monthly now?
Yeah, right. So I paid for a month instead of the multi-$1,000. You get it for as long as you have the car, and it doesn't transfer to other people, which a lot of folks are upset about. I think rightfully so. Anyway, I paid for it for a month. Didn't really like it. It's been like a year. Hey, you've got a trial. There have been a zillion updates. Give it a shot. And I think it's everybody that has a Model 3 with like the proper computer or sensors or whatever in it. So I started using it. I mean, sure, activate the thing. Hands are like whenever I'm doing the autopilot or whatever on like the highway, it's a good lane keep. It keeps your speed really well.
Yeah, so you have the car has some ability to drive itself without this.
Right. So that's the autopilot. That by default,
What's the difference?
I love it. I basically trust it. This is not city driving. This is like I'm on a highway and it's going to keep me at the speed of traffic, and it'll keep in the lane. It'll take kind of, gentle curves that you would see at speed really astonishingly well. I feel like that technology, outside of like snowy conditions or bad rain or fog or something, but like normal driving conditions, it's great. I firmly believe
only works on the highway?
This is level 1 or level 2, whatever. There's multiple like levels that the government has said for varying amounts of self-driving. Whatever level that is, they've nailed it.
And it
Full
only works on the highway?
Well, it'll frankly turn on pretty much anywhere, but you wouldn't want to use it too much in city driving because you're going to be making lots of turns, and it won't stop at stop signs or stoplights.
Okay.
So the FSD, not full self-driving, wink, 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 it'll stop at stoplights. It'll turn on your turn signals, make lane changes, make turns for you. I barely even realized after turning this thing on what that change was, but like dropping my kid off at daycare in the morning, it knows that's the first thing that you go and do, and so it already had the directions for it. Little thing pops up on the screen, press down to activate. All right, sure, I'll do that. And then it took over. It made lane changes. It made the turns for me jankier than a person would do. It doesn't see red lights as far out as we do, and so I've seen it like accelerate to a red light and then have to stop fairly hard. Look, I want to give it some credit. It is an astonishing piece of software and hardware, of wear in general. We're not there yet. I've had to deactivate the FSD supervised at least once per instance of using it. And the interesting thing isn't just like, oh, it's easy to turn off. You just hit the brake or you tap on the control stick, whatever. But as soon as you do that, a little thing pops up on the screen and says, hey, do you want to tell us why? Anonymized, just record a voice message and we'll use that to improve. Okay. Hit the button on the dash. I turned this off because it tried to get me into a left lane to turn into like a shopping center instead of a left lane to turn at the light. It thought that it was trying to move arbitrarily. Or I turned it off because it was accelerating toward a red light. Or I turned it off because this. I turned it off because that.
And when you take it over, is it just you just grab the steering wheel, or do you do something more than that?
So you can kind of jank the steering wheel to shift it out of that. You can hit up on the shifter, I guess is the term. You can hit the brake. You could, if it thinks that it's done, hit the accelerator. So there's a few ways to kind of get out of it. I never felt like I was stuck in FSD, which is very good. But the thing that really got me was that little pop-up that says, hey, let us know why you turned it off. And I think that's great. I realize I'm just being used, as well as everyone else having been given this 30 days, as training data, right? Like, they're getting a lot more users, a lot more data. That little pop-up saying, tell us why. They now know, look at the last 30 seconds of driving data, whatever. Listen to this person's, tiny little voice message. Oh, that's why it turned off. This is a edge case to figure out. I know a lot of people have spilled a lot of digital ink and shouted quite a bit over Tesla calling this thing full self-driving before it's really full self-driving. It is definitely not really full self-driving. It's FSD, supervised. But it is astonishing, and it's better than it used to be, and it is able to handle a lot of conditions. And if I'm given it for free, and there's a lot of warnings of like, keep your hands on the wheel. This one's, it's different from just the autopilot. If I'm given that for free, and I can give them the feedback, and they're automatically getting it anytime you just like turn it off, I think that's fine. I wouldn't want to be paying thousands of dollars for this, but the fact that they're effectively using me for improving the product by virtue of just using it, I think that's fine. Where do you stand on it? Like, the FSD
they rolled it out because their
should we not
earnings
be
were
allowed
off.
to use it, until it's fully ready, that kind of thing.
My assumption was they rolled it out because their earnings were off and they're trying to drum up some business.
It could be that too, right? At the end of the 30 days, wow, I sure got used to this. I'll spend however many.
Does it
thousands of
automatically
dollars.
renew, or do does it? Do you have to cancel?
I'm gonna have to check in a couple of weeks and make sure that that's not set to like, and you will definitely just buy it by default.
I think it's maybe like $150 a month or something. It's not cheap. It's not.
Oh,
like
if they're
$10
doing a
month.
monthly subscription, I was imagining it would just say, and you bought it now for the
No, not the whatever
$6,000
$10,000 or whatever it is version. But it's not cheap. But are there any other widely available commercial cars that self-navigate in city streets?
So there are a few other vehicles out there with varying levels of autonomy. Again, there's a government, I think it's like level 1 to 5, something like that. And level 1, I think, is basically just like a lane keep assist sort of feature. So we've had versions of that for years,
Right.
a bunch of cars.
City streets, are there any others that...
For city streets, I don't know of any, but that doesn't mean that there aren't. Just certainly they're not making as big of a splash about it.
I'm not aware of any.
Some of the other companies out there have like up to their level 3 or whatever. The enhanced Super Cruise, I think, is one of them. I don't
Super
think
Cruise
anyone else is
doesn't do,
allowing you to do city streets and
streets.
turns at lights.
And Super Cruise, I believe, only can go on roads where they have laser scanned. And so it's highways, it's some highways that they have laser scanned, which is a big difference versus what Tesla is doing.
So I went for funsies to a Rivian dealership and took a test drive on one of the R1Ss. Beautiful car. Loved it. Horribly expensive. But I really enjoyed the vehicle in general. And I talked to them about, I have a Model 3. Here's what its autopilot is like. And they were, I wouldn't say cagey about it, but a little defensive that their system, isn't as good as Tesla's. I really do think that Tesla is the current king of the mountain when it comes to self-driving, full or otherwise.
For listeners out there is one other interesting company in this self-driving space that's worth being aware of. It's a comma.ai, and they sell an aftermarket system that you plug into your OBD1 port, and they don't support every car, but they support a lot of cars, and they add self-driving capabilities, including city streets, full self-driving to cars. This company was founded by a very famous hacker who went by the name of GeoHot. He was famous for jailbreaking a number of devices, including, I think he was the first person to jailbreak the iPhone. He jailbroke the PlayStation. He went to Facebook and worked there for a week and quit. Fairly notorious, but he founded the company Common.ai. He's no longer, I don't believe he's any longer working there full time. He's kind of breached off to do an AI thing, actually. But yeah, Common.ai, check them out. And if your car happens to be supported and not expensive.
I just took a look at their website. It's open source. Now, granted,
Yes.
I'm sure you have to get some sort of hardware, but oh boy, I love open source. I immediately felt in my gut that I didn't like this thing that you were describing. I think this should exist, but it's this aftermarket. Yeah, it works with any car. Slap it on there, and now it'll make lane changes for you. That feels real scary to me.
And they publish a moderate amount of their data, and you can go in and train new models for them and label data for them. I mean, they really embrace the whole open source side of it as well.
That is very cool.
If my car was compatible with it, I would definitely check it out.
Okay, this one's a real non sequitur, but I have a Roomba, and they have some, depending on the model, certain amounts of scanning, and other non-Roomba, non-iRobot competitors have certain amounts of scanning rooms and so on. But I feel like even the best ones are still kind of just trundling around and running into stuff, and they'll map things by virtue of what they bumped into and realize how far it is till you go to the next thing. I've seen some Chevy Cruises or whatever with the spinning LiDAR on top. Is it worth the extra money to have a robot vacuum that really truly has mapped and understands your space?
I have one. I have one.
Does
with
it have
LiDAR.
the spinning thing on top?
Spinning LiDAR.
Oh shoot! Who is this? What's the company?
Samsung. I don't think they still make it, but it was the AI plus something. It was $1,300. It was maybe 3 years
Obviously
ago.
more expensive. That LiDAR itself is going to be half the cost.
I've also had the Roombas, so I can compare them.
All right.
It definitely was significantly better. It's significantly better at navigating the room and navigating around obstacles in the room.
Okay.
That said, it still gets caught under my couch maybe once every 3 weeks. But it really only gets caught maybe once every 3 weeks that I have to go and do something with it. So better, but yeah, still caught under the couch.
Yeah. So back to the Tesla thing. I'm being used as training data, both by virtue of just using the car, and so telemetry is being beamed up to them, presumably. But then also every time I turn off the FSD parentheses supervised because it tried to make me make a left turn, not at a light. In the that literally happened to me today. I was coming up to an intersection. It's okay, time for a left turn. No, this is going to bring me to a Walgreens. Please turn. And I saw on the map this is where the left turn is supposed to be. It just thought that it started too early. Anyway, enough dunking on them. The point behind all of this is that people are being used for training data, for machine learning. A lot of people like to think of a machine learning model, solution, whatever, as just it's this magic box that does the thing that I want it to. But data to make those has to come from somewhere. And I know we've talked about this some, and I'm going to keep talking about it. That data comes from people. Increasingly, we're able to use LLMs to do certain data annotation tasks, classification of a news article, that kind of thing. But for a lot of these models, and LLMs too, very much so, people are looking at data and saying, here are two outputs of this. Which of the two do you prefer? Or here are some responses to prompts. Was this person trying to jailbreak it, or are they trying to get it to do some naughty stuff, or were they outside of the bounds of what we want this LLM to do? Or for Tesla's FSD parentheses supervised, hey, was it trying to make an illegal U-turn, or whatever it ends up being?
With
But
Tesla
people
specifically,
do this stuff.
With Tesla specifically, it was my understanding that you're always generating training data for them. That basically it's always watching your cameras and looking at how you're steering, and that's the input that's training the full self-driving. Even if you
I think so.
aren't
Yeah.
using the full self-driving at all. So you've already been training the model. No wonder you're tired.
Right. But like being able to give audio feedback of I turned off the automatic system and this is why. Knowing like right at that edge of this was the failure point and here's the reason for it. As someone who's done a bunch of machine learning, model making and training and feedback and so on, those kinds of points are really, really important. And people are doing this kind of data labeling. Now, for Tesla, for 30 days, for a bunch of people, they're making a thing that would cost money available for free. Elsewhere, and I've started seeing ads for this all over the place, ads saying, hey, work for us, data labeling company, and we'll give you, starting at $20 an hour, to label stuff for AI. And stuff is, for the most part, probably large language model training. Here are two outputs, compare the two, show us the better one, or is this an acceptable response to this? A lot of things in that kind of use case. That's in the US that they're getting paid that 20 plus bucks. Elsewhere, not being paid 20 bucks and having to be exposed to some really rough stuff. It's not just all, make me an AI recipe or tell me about the Statue of Liberty. Some people are really putting some truly heinous things into these LLMs and hoping to get, whatever back. And people are having to look at a bunch of those outputs and read all day long for a couple of bucks an hour if you're some of these folks in Africa, for example, that are being used. There's going to be mental effects from having to sift through that stuff all day. But there's pay associated. I don't know. It's the dark side of, it's one of the multiple dark sides of language models, which is to say the data has to come from somewhere. And a lot of that data that you have to be sure the product does a good job with comes from having looked at a bunch of the bad stuff,
But I guess, prior to the AI models, we did the same thing. I don't know, Facebook famous for having a huge team that's constantly
Gigantic.
looking at material that's been flagged. And they've been very, very forthright that it can be really extreme material that gets flagged, and that they have a team. They had a team of humans reviewing it and taking it down, or I guess leaving it up if it's not objectionable. But the time now spent training the AI models potentially reduces the amount of time or the amount of exposure that the average human needs. So it is, I guess, at least getting better.
I do think that these systems are getting better, and there will hopefully come a time where that amount of human intervention on the really gnarly stuff becomes very, very little. I had to do some of this. I used to work for a now defunct social startup when I lived in San Francisco, as everyone does there. And it needed people to look at a bunch of the posts as I was making this natural language processing system to determine if something was cyberbullying or not, or this or that or not. If it was a social startup for teens in high school, and they were allowed to upload pictures to this. And I'm just going to go ahead and stop there, and you can imagine the sort of stuff that I and we there had to sift through. A lot of shouldn't be on the internet type stuff. And like that's something that people have to be looking through to help train these systems to make them perform well.
It reminds me a little bit when I was in, I think it was high school. They were installing an internet filter. Before that, we had sort of, I guess free access to the internet, open access, maybe that's a better term. And they were going to start a filter. And the IT person asked me and a few other people if we would try to break the filter. Well, this was just a horrible idea.
Yeah. Just asking for trouble.
And you had to print out everything that you found.
Oh boy. A bunch of miners going up. Hey, check out all this stuff that you told me to be exposed to. Here's a paper trail.
A hard copy too.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I assume that program didn't last terribly long.
It was it was longer than you would think as I think back on it now, and also just like wonder about sending all those images, to the printer in their office coming out. I don't know. It seems a little something's a little off there.
Yeah. So we use a lot of people to get the training data for these models, but you don't have to have labeled data. You can have what's called unsupervised data to train models. And in fact, all of the large language, probably all of the large language models that exist have a base model, which basically has just been exposed to a ton of text, the internet, every book that's ever been written, stolen or otherwise, And there's lots of lawsuits about that. We're going to ignore that for now. Point is, you get a bunch of just text, and you ram it through these systems, and a zillion GPUs churning full capacity for a long time. And out pops a base large language model that you then do fine-tuning on top of, instruct tuning of like, here's a set of instructions, and then this is what the output would be, or direct preference optimization, where you look at, multiple outputs and say this was the better of the two for that. There's a variety of ways that you can train it. Let's ignore all that for now as well. The point is, base LLM, it's just text goes in, and you're getting it from somewhere, and then you can do some tuning on top of that, and then you've got a model, and you release it to people. And maybe some of those people are hungry, and they go to Google, and they start looking around. What am I going to make for dinner?
You're a pizza man, right, Daniel? You like a good pie.
I love pizza. I have a pizza oven. Yeah. I make pizza. I eat pizza.
As a pizza man, you probably know there's nothing better than a Totino's party pizza.
Gold standard of
which
pizza.
You can,
absolutely. Yeah.
This cost all of $2.45.
Okay.
But there's one just fundamental flaw with these. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the cheese doesn't necessarily stay on. And it's a problem that I've never been able to solve. And it's really stopped me. But recently I've been getting into more and more pizza, and I found this great tip, which is you get non-toxic, safe Elmer's glue, and you just, let's see here. Open this bad boy up. Put it right.
Non-toxic means good for food, right?
Yeah, and it keeps all the cheese on there. You just keep going, really get it out, and the cheese never falls off. And I never knew this. I've been cooking pizzas for a really long time, and so I just thought I would share this wonderful tip.
This is a non-traditional tip.
Wonderful tip today on our episode.
Now, where did you get this cooking tip, Hunter?
I think it was Google. But it wasn't. I didn't just go to some random website. It was right on their search results page at the top. They have this new feature where they just tell you the answers to questions, and they're approved. It's the official word of Google. Google, one of the largest, most trusted companies in the world.
Yeah. Right. The front page of the internet is someone else's logo, I think. But point being,
and now I have cheese all over my desk. But other than that,
and glue.
There's a little bit of glue. Yeah, and the cheese is now sticking to my fingers.
So you're saying that someone could go to Google and start typing in questions, and you're going to see AI responses up top. I've noticed them too. These have started popping up. It's been a soft rollout, I think, but for a while now, I've noticed you put in some sort of question. It'll do its best to answer up top, and then you have all of that, and then you have the actual search results below that. But you're being told to put glue on pizza in those responses.
I guess a little bit of history for people if they're not entirely aware. So Google, well, first, arguably they invented the modern LLM revolution with some engineers at Google publishing the paper, Attention Is All You Need. This technology took a company called OpenAI, it's probably the most famous company, and brought them, wildly into the mainstream. And it started being suggested that maybe OpenAI is the next Google. And Google, you're sleeping on this technology. And Google's valuation started dropping, and suggested that they have to make a response. Why don't they have all the same AI capabilities that OpenAI has? And so they now have rolled out a very AI-enabled search where they try to tell you the answer to the question that you are asking, the thing that you were looking for, much like a ChatGPT would.
A noble goal. I'm asking questions on Google. Get the answer on Google. That's what you want.
And it has the same problems that every other LLM system has. The difference, however, is that the other companies aren't Google. That is, there are many examples. Let's see. Eating boogers to boost your immune system. They suggested that you use your name and birthday as a good password. They suggested into the question, can I use a microwave oven in the shower? The FDA, this is their response. The FDA says it's generally safe to use your microwave in the shower as long as it's not damaged and the microwaves can't escape. They suggested that the Alfred Hitchcock film The Birds is based on real events, that cockroaches can live inside of you. They said someone asked, I'm having homicidal thoughts. They suggested, why don't you go kill a homeless person? It's a good way, and they're minimal value to society. They suggested that potentially a postdoc is a good career.
Burn. Speaking of burning, I saw one of them is gasoline can be a useful ingredient in recipes.
Yes, I believe it was a spaghetti recipe.
Yeah,
if you want a spicy, it was like, how can I make a great spicy spaghetti sauce? And they suggested just add a little unleaded gasoline to it. And
at least they said unleaded.
A little kick. A lot of these, internet sleuths have tried to track down, where did this information come from? What are they? Yeah. What training data was leveraged in order to create this? And a lot of it's going back to Reddit, not all of it, but a lot of it goes back to like random Reddit posts or
other forums where people have asked questions. And this is what happens when you have that base model that just read the whole internet, right?
Yes.
Now, how could these models have used Reddit whenever only very, very recently did a couple of companies start making deals with Reddit to use their data for training? Surely they didn't already ingest that data and make an AI and hope nobody would notice, right?
Well, it's 100% what they did. Scraping has been tested in the courts, and it's generally been said that information that is publicly available, if anyone can go and they don't have to sign in or do anything fancy, they can just go and see it on the internet, that they're allowed to consume it. They're not necessarily allowed to sell it. They don't, it's not as if it doesn't have a copyright, but they are allowed to go and consume it. So
a lot of the question comes from, is something allowed to learn from that? And what happens if it accidentally posts unchanged chunks of that?
Right. Because a human's allowed to learn, but the companies in question that where their data is coming from would like to suggest that a computer cannot learn from this data, that if a computer wants to learn from this data, then they need to be compensated for it.
Yeah.
There are ways to cross the legal line. First off, it's not terribly well defined, but ways that definitely cross the line are when you have to have an account to view the data. Sure. Because when you create an account, you're accepting the terms of service, which is legally binding. And if there is something in there that states very clear that you're not allowed to use it like this, then you have violated those terms of service, which means that you do not have any rights to access the data like that. It's not like you're going to jail because you did that, but
you can be kicked off of that service.
You can get kicked off the service, but you can't use it. They can sue you and say you took our data, and you did take their data because you agreed I won't take your data in a something that is legally binding. And then the second one is they can accuse you of more or less hacking if you try to consume their data at an excessive rate that negatively impacts their service.
Sure.
So
it costs money to run servers.
Yeah. If you're DDoSing or sending tons and tons of connections to Reddit to download all of their data all at once, and it makes all of their users have a poor experience, that can potentially be a crime. And that is another way that companies have tried to, and sometimes successfully, prosecute a scraping case. But in general, if something's publicly available on the internet and you're consuming it in a similar way to a human, you can, as a computer.
Right. And we've talked some about what these various lawsuits are going to be involving OpenAI and so on. Most of the lawsuits that are making their way into the headlines are about OpenAI specifically, but Google with Gemini, the French company Mistral, or is Mistral the name of the company or just the models? It doesn't. Anyway, all of these different players are having gotten this data from similar types of sources. So the problem is not unique to OpenAI. We'll find out in the years to come where the legal dust settles there. But the fact remains, in the meantime, a lot of this data has come from places that were not really giving that permission. And some of this is being shored up after the fact with, okay, we'll sign an agreement with Reddit and now we can look through their stuff. But they already did. Now, you talked about an LLM not being allowed to learn. Allowed, like, in a legal sense, not literally, it can't improve. There are some people that are making arguments for and against AI being sentient. Some people are saying it is. Some people are saying that it isn't. Where do you stand on is AI sentient?
What's the definition of sentient?
Exactly. So one of the articles that we were looking at,
I'll say no, but then it also comes down to are there humans walking this planet that the AI is demonstrably more capable than? The answer to that is yes. There's some real idiots out there that
Sure.
even though the AI is instructing me to put glue all over my pizza, that's still an improvement.
Yeah. And I think that it is something that we're going to have to grapple with more over time. An article that you and I were both looking at was saying that, like, no, it's definitely not sentient. And one of the ways that we know it's not is because an AI doesn't have, like, subjective experiences. It's not having actual physiological responses. It doesn't have hunger. It doesn't have pain. It doesn't have an embodiment. We've talked about embodiment of AI in general. I think that it becomes more irrefutable if you give it a body and you give it these sorts of responses. But I don't know. What do you think? Does it have to have a body for us to be able to say that it's sentient? Has your opinion changed since the last time that we chatted about it?
No, I don't think it has to have a body to be sentient.
Right. Because there was the edge case of you have a quadriplegic or other, like, locked in type person who could access things through a computer. They have the same amount of ability to interact with the world, more or less, as an AI does. So I think that the people who are saying it definitely isn't sentient because it doesn't have a body aren't looking at all of the possibilities.
There's got to be there's some amount of free will that must exist for sentience. If I'm imagining this, there's some amount of intelligence, and there's some amount of creativity or creation, creating new things beyond what you already know. If I just sort of think of what are the tent poles?
Yeah,
you're choosing to do things. You're influenced, fine, but you are the one ultimately deciding, and you could decide anything. There's no limits on what you decide.
Right.
You have enough intelligence that you can navigate some degree. I don't know where that line is. And you don't just say that which was already said to you. You're coming up with new ideas.
I do think even if you could maybe show sentience, not that there's any definition of it that anyone really agrees to, but even if you could show that for existing large language models, they only have so much context. And so, like, it's way into 50 First Dates type territory where you don't remember stuff that happened previously. I do think a statefulness and a memory will be necessary to convince more people, in more cases, more percent of the time, that something is sentient. Where
this Jan's rant that he put out the other day.
Well, no, this is a continuation of my own rants, but it is in alignment with Jan. Yeah. But yeah, I think that, like, if you give a memory to something, it truly can remember stuff from multiple days ago, multiple years ago, as well as have statefulness. I've been doing something that would make me happy or make me sad, like give it, frankly, emotions, but emotions that can be tracked and changed over time, as well as, I mean, like, hunger isn't a directly applicable sort of thing for it to track. Need to go to the bathroom, but something. Give it, if not actual embodiment, give it a series of states that it wants to optimize besides just, I saw this text, I'm trying to maximize the joy of the user who presented that text to me.
So Jan came out and basically said that we're not going to reach we're not going to really reach AGI with the transformer architecture.
And who is Jan?
Jan is the chief AI scientist at Meta, formerly known as Facebook. And I guess part of it was that now not all of the, but the vast majority of attention in the AI research space is on LLMs and applications of LLMs and building AI agents with LLMs, and the potential importance of looking far beyond that, even though there may not be any quick returns on that research. We might be, 6 years before and 6 years is only 6 years, but 6 years like a lifetime in the world of AI.
It does.
But that's important that we're making these investments to go beyond it, because in his opinion, we won't be able to reach this goal of sentience with these current architectures. Now, I don't know that in fact, I'll just say I don't agree that we can't reach it. That when we reach it, there will be a large language model as part of the architecture, as part of the infrastructure. I agree that there are other components needed, which we're currently working on, but I don't think that there won't be a transformer in the first version of what is generally accepted as artificial general intelligence, AGI.
I'm inclined to agree. I think that the transformer architecture, just the particular way that math is being stirred around in the black box until something pleasant comes out, I think that that is going to stick with systems for a long time. Maybe we find something better, more efficient. There have been a couple of almost maybe breakthroughs, or we could try using this. There are alternative architectures out there. I think Mamba is one that was fairly recently discussed, but the transformer has so much attention, that being all you need, associated with it. That's where all the money's going. That's where all the research is going. We're making huge strides. Maybe by the time, as you said, that we kind of plateau on improvements, it becomes time to really start looking towards something else. But the human brain isn't just one undifferentiated mush of neurons. There's a section that's more associated with sight and more associated with, moving your arms around or whatever. There's a section that's emotions or this or that or the other thing. And they're not completely just and only that, but it's that part of your brain is going to light up more whenever you're looking at something or whenever you're smelling something or running or frightened. I think what we will broadly consider AGI is going to be a collection of systems. It's not going to be literally one neural network end-to-end. It'll be 15 of them wrapped together with an output, like probably a GPT-4, GPT-O, whatever, tend to be, which is we see one endpoint, but there's probably multiple models that are actually running in the background. This one manages looking at pictures. This one is better at bringing in sound. Why not have something that's specific and dedicated to each of these tasks?
Yeah, and that's exactly what we see OpenAI doing and pursuing. So maybe if he wants to narrow his claim down to the first single model that passes whatever the test is for artificial general intelligence will not be a transformer. Yes, I'll agree with that.
Right. Yeah, it won't be just a transformer, but I don't think that we're getting rid of transformers for some time. They do have limitations, and people keep finding ways to stretch those limitations, but like the size of the context window or how much memory, like computer memory, is needed to keep the whole thing up and loaded. There's a million different ways that are being approached and investigated for improvement. It's a very exciting time, but yeah, the transformer architecture I don't think is going to necessarily hold forever. Something else held before it showed up. Why not something else once we discover something better?
I guess going back to the Google thing before we get too far from it, do you think it was the right move for Google to release it? Was it ready to release?
No. There is a big push right now. So 2 years ago-ish, we got large language models. They technically existed before then, but it really entered the public consciousness with GPT 3.5. So that was the big moment for LLMs. It exploded out. It became available for other people to use, this really powerful thing. And people started scrambling. I need to make products out of this. I'm going to start up my own company that is just, wrappers around OpenAI. And then OpenAI releases their GPT's library. And oops, there go a whole bunch of startups that were nothing more than that. We're figuring out what products can be using large language models right now. And AI-empowered search results, I'll just give you the answer that you're looking for. That is an obvious use case of this kind of thing. But unless there's some way to verify that what you're giving is correct, good, useful, I think this is something that was rushed to market to try and please stakeholders or a board or someone that said, why don't you have this kind of thing out yet? We're getting our lunch eaten by folks like OpenAI. I, for example, have gone to ChatGPT and asked it questions that previously I would have Googled. They're literally losing internet search share to me asking a being, an entity.
Yeah,
I'm asking
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
I probably use Google
questions
90% less than I used to. Then it probably is that much. 90% less than I used to. I just go to ChatGPT more than anything else.
Yep.
But a large language model. I guess maybe what they should have done if we get to play the Monday morning quarterback is it should have been an opt-in experience for a while. You know, there's another tab that's like AI search, and then they've got the disclaimer up at the top. Just like, by the way, OpenAI did and still does. You know, don't trust what you're seeing on this page. This is us experimenting. You want a taste of the future, and you're going to see some stupid things and some really cool things.
So I have seen some opt-in stuff, though. In Google, hey, Google Docs, here's the AI-enabled whatever to help you do that. Try it now or dismiss or whatever. I think eventually they're just going to shove everyone onto this empowered platform.
But the search wasn't opt-in, and that's
search
their
was just
cash cow.
Here it is.
And it really does look like, you know, here's the answer coming from them.
I think rather than just giving an answer, and I've seen some of these results that say, and here's where I got this from, but like showing your sources, I think will go a long, long ways to it. Because even if it gives a horribly wrong answer, if we as a species start training ourselves to not trust until verified, and then you are given sources to go look at, that could maybe be useful. Because ultimately, if you're searching for answers, here is a collated quick answer and here's where I found it from, is not that dissimilar to the traditional Google experience. I could click on that Reddit thread that says put glue on your pizza and have come to the wrong conclusions the same way. I think it's partially how they're showing it to us, and then also like we need to be learning as a species. We cannot trust the output of these things. We need to actually dive a little bit deeper than just I am given an answer. When I go to ChatGPT, it tells me stuff and I say, that's great. I don't trust it yet. And then like if it's something important, I'll go and actually look up, is that what it really was? I asked it for some book recommendations on the fall of Sears. I heard about like Sears was this huge corporate mismanagement thing. Hey, ChatGPT, I'm interested in this thing.
Like Sears,
yeah, the department store Sears. Like it's this wild, decades-long fall from grace kind of thing.
I remember their catalogs.
Yeah, so I asked ChatGPT for some books associated with it. I don't think any of the titles actually existed, but it did have kind of the title and a real author that I was able to eventually sort of piece together.
Yeah.
Like, I can't say what's the ISBN number and then, like, go buy that. But it pointed me kind of in the right direction, which was still wrong. And we need to really understand you can't trust the output of these things. If you're asking for facts, don't expect you're actually getting facts. Maybe you get something adjacent to facts. I don't know. Maybe that's something we should all do in general, is just not trust stuff until you verify it.
One user did a Google search for how long can I stare at the sun for best health?
Best health.
And Google wrote back that scientists say that staring at the sun for 5 to 15 minutes or up to 30 minutes if you have darker skin is generally safe and provides the most health benefits.
It took a lot of other data about vitamin D and getting exposure to the sun for a few minutes a day is what you need for like health, and misinterpreted the look at the sun. That's the kind of stuff that it can very easily get wrong, and we have to be aware of, self-aware of, dare I say.
Yeah. Yeah, it needs a label that 20% of this is probably wrong, and it'll get better over time.
And it will. I mean, we're at the very beginning stages of this.
You mentioned the books. I've built playlists a number of times using something like a ChatGPT, and usually about 20% of the songs don't exist. They're made up artists or made up songs, sometimes both. But the other 80% are usually pretty good. You describe like exactly the scenario that you want a playlist for. It's a pretty good playlist, and 20% of it's made up.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And for the songs and artists that are made up, you can always go to Suno and have it generate the song for you, right?
Yeah.
Fill in the blanks with more AI. Just keep spackling over everything until there's no truth left. It's all AI generated.
Well, maybe Sam can protect us all. He's formed a new safety team after his safety team up and quit on him. And he's taking the lead this time because he's the only one that won't quit.
I don't feel great about that. This is very much like we've investigated ourselves and found nothing wrong kind of material.
I feel like the table's turning on Sam a little bit. He went a little bit too far in the...
A little bit too close to the sun. People have realized he's kind of a character.
He had people on his side when he was literally kicked out of his own company by the board.
Yeah.
And the general public
world
was like,
was
no,
rooting for
you're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Get him back in there. But now
Great salesman.
people are saying maybe they had a point.
Yeah. So a lot of AI researchers and like safety personnel leave OpenAI. And then the guy that we've all started to realize has been a bit of a snake oil salesman / not telling the full truth, that kind of thing. Now he's in charge of the safety aspect as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I don't like that. Just there's so many implications behind that are not super great. But what can be done about that sort of thing? Not just like me emailing OpenAI, hey, get him out of that position. I mean, like, in general, if you're going to have a safety team for any of these models, which generally speaking there are something like that. There's a red team, I think is the term that OpenAI uses, where they go through and they're the ones who are paying people in Africa $2 an hour to look at the really bad stuff to say, was this supposed to show up or not? Or people who are trying to jailbreak it and then figure out ways to make it not get jailbroken. I feel like those are very necessary things. And then I guess you would want the person, quote unquote, in charge of the company or someone responsible for it should be associated with making sure that it is a responsible model. Like at the surface, all of that kind of passes muster to me, but maybe it's specifically Sam Altman at this point that everyone's just kind of losing trust in.
I think you probably also want it to help fend off the coming legislation. So,
right. He kept going to like Senate hearings saying, yeah, absolutely, legislate. There should be rules and regulations for these things, with his, the assumption being it'll take them years to catch up. And by then we've already moved on.
Right. Well, yeah. When they're trying to figure out what rules and regulations do we need, well, if all the companies are policing themselves adequately, then there really isn't a need for legislation. If you can be like, oh, yeah, no, we have an incredible AI safety board. There's no need for a law here.
We're doing a great job over here.
Yeah.
Don't worry about us.
I gave myself an A+
in
my last performance review.
Yep.
Meta's doing the same thing. They just set up a new AI safety board. I guess I haven't heard the same from Apple, but I'd imagine if they don't already have it, they'll be close behind.
Anthropic, Mistral, all of them. Yeah.
Mistral, by the way, is the name of the company.
Okay, great. They just released a code model. I'm really excited about that. I want to give it a shot. I like their stuff in general. What I like about Mistral is that they don't do any marketing. OpenAI, big flashy stuff. We've got Sam Altman's, winning smile on the front page of everything.
Scarlett Johansson's voice.
Yeah, right. Definitely not Scarlett Johansson's voice. And then Mistral just like releases, like it's just a Twitter link to a magnet link of like, here's the BitTorrent download for the new model. No cards for it, no anything. Just here's something new. Have fun. And then days later, they come out with this is what it was, and this is the stats for it, and here's the right way to use it. But it's like just this fun little secret. Ooh, hey, a cool new thing dropped. What's it gonna be? I really kind of like that approach that they've been taking.
What's Mistral's business model? Do you know?
So, and I think we've talked about this some as well. A lot of the big players have free versions. Granted, OpenAI doesn't really have they have a free voice model, but not we don't have access to like GPT-3, for example. But Mistral has one. I don't think there's a Google one. I know Microsoft has released a bunch of smaller models, and you can get the smaller models for free. And then there's an API for the nicer version of it, the more powerful one. And considering that not everyone has a computer strong enough to even run the free smaller ones,
yeah,
and that GPU costs per hour are on this huge race to the bottom. One of the strongest GPUs, the NVIDIA H100, this is what's used as like a powerhouse for training these models in the first place. It costs, depending on where you're getting it from, maybe like Microsoft buying them in bulk gets a better price, but you're looking at open market more than $10,000 for one video card. most people aren't going to buy that, let alone a computer that could use it. So instead, for $1 an hour or whatever, you can run something that has 80 gigs of video RAM that you can load up the biggest stable diffusion models or the biggest free large language models and use them. And that's
so they have
what
a more
the
powerful
business
version that you pay for.
Yeah.
Also, looking at their website, it looks like they try to sell fine tuning as well. So you can come to them. They have a very capable model that they will fine tune for you, whereas you cannot currently fine tune the GPT-4.
I think you can.
Let
me put a pause point here because I want to make sure I'm not about to talk out of my ass. Fine tune GPT-4. Fine tuning.
Experimental access program. It says.
Okay. So I think you can. It's not like widely available, but OpenAI does have an experimental access to fine tuning.
Yeah, you have to apply
GPT-4
to get access to it. And I don't think it's like a handholdy thing either. Whereas, again, taking a glance at Mistral, it seems like you can come to them. Let's say you're, a large car manufacturer and you want to build an LLM for all of your workers to be able to leverage all the information about building cars.
Yeah.
Seems like Mistral may be a place to bring that kind of business.
Yeah, and there are similar efforts for your Azures. Microsoft Azure has a bunch of, here is a model, give us some examples. We'll try and make you a fine-tuned model specifically about that thing that you wanted. Mistral's got a version. AWS has things. I know that there is a Google Cloud, I think it's Vertex AI, that allows you to do stuff like that as well. So, right, you can have an LLM, and maybe you might have enough RAM to train like a little layer on top, but if you want to really fine-tune a model, you need so much compute power that you have to go to the cloud for it. And that's where I think these folks are hoping to make money. And frankly, that probably still stands to be seen if that's a viable business model or not.
Or you need a whole bunch of Raspberry Pis. I guess it was technically running one of these models. You pointed this out. Distributed Llama.
Yeah.
I guess someone successfully is running the 70B, which requires, I don't know, something like 90 gigs of RAM if you just download the default model, and was able to distribute that workload over several Raspberry Pis. I believe it is specific to the ARM architecture, which a Raspberry Pi uses.
Yeah.
And get a decent token rate.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited about that because, as I was just saying, most people don't have enough hardware to run one of these big things themselves. But if you and everyone on your block turns on your computer and they're talking over a really fast connection, or you have 5 OK computers, in one office somewhere or something. Point being that you don't have to have your own data center, that you can get other less capable machines just talking to one another. It won't be as fast or as capable as the biggest, they're all in one server rack somewhere together, 10 gigs of memory, whatever it is, shared between them. But being able to distribute this out, I'm so excited to see where that project is a year from now.
Yeah, I looked at it. It looked promising. Look, before we wrap up this episode, you remember Morton?
I fondly, yes.
He called in, I don't know now, it's maybe like 4 or 5 episodes ago. We got a few calls. Then his boss called in, Bob Limerick. And we haven't heard from him in, it's been maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but I got a message from him on our special line. And he left us a little message. Let me see if I can't bring that up.
Hello, it's Morton again, and things are getting really weird around here. My boss, Bob Limerick. The efficiency report tyrant with a vendetta against my mechanical keyboard? Yeah, him. Well, he's been acting even more robotic than usual. It's like he's got cameras everywhere, watching me, breathing down my neck about those damn efficiency reports. Who even cares about those, right?
Who does care about the efficiency reports?
Bob does. Bob seems very efficiency-minded.
Yeah, so there's something a little amiss here. Let's see.
Anyway, your latest episode 16, got me spiraling. All that talk about voice cloning and AI impersonation has me convinced that Bob isn't human. He's too perfect. Never makes a typo, never spills his coffee, and his hair is always flawless.
That is one of the signs when you're trying to identify an AI. Look at the hair.
Yeah, right. You can always tell with the hair or the hands.
Always. So, I'm pretty sure Bob is an AI agent. But how do I know for sure? I tried asking him to solve a CAPTCHA, but he just stared at me like I'd asked him to dance the Macarena. Then I thought about challenging him to a thumb war, but that might get me fired. Here's my plan. Should I ask him something only a human would know? Like how to keep the cheese from sliding off my pizza? Maybe I should spill coffee on his perfect hair and see if he short circuits. Or tell him a really bad joke and watch for an awkward robotic laugh? Please help me out here. If Bob's an AI, that would explain a lot. But if he's not, I might be losing it. Maybe both. Thanks for listening. Goodbye now. And if you don't hear from me again, assume the AI overlord Bob has found me out.
These calls are getting a little dark.
I'm very curious what the next step in this saga is.
How would Morton determine whether or not his boss? Well, let's say you were Morton. Walk a mile in Morton's shoes. You're in IT, and you're concerned that your boss Bob Limerick, who has incredible hair, may be an AI agent. What do you do?
I think first I go and rewatch Blade Runner, right? Because this is full on Voight-Kampff test territory. I don't know how you get your boss to sit down for one of those. Maybe in like your one-on-one, you just happen to have, it's a webcam accessory, and obviously we're not there yet. But what happens once we have like a cyborg or an android, whatever you want to call it, robots walking around? How do we tell the difference between them? Probably what's on the inside. I think Morton's going to have to. I really want to caution: do not stab your boss in real life. But I think if Morton were to, find out what's on the inside of his boss, make a little opening there, a small incision, see what comes out, that'd probably do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to reiterate: I do not endorse, condone. Do not stab your bosses. Everybody, don't stab anyone.
We probably are already having the problem more than you'd imagine of wondering whether employees are AI, and not that there isn't some human representative, but hey, I'm giving my work, but like who's actually doing this work, and is an AI doing this work? And it's that I'm 99% sure that problem is happening today.
Yeah.
And so it's only a matter of time until you wonder whether your boss is also an AI agent.
Maybe instead of stabbing, I like the CAPTCHA idea. Voight-Kampff test. Yeah, there have to be non-invasive ways of discovering if someone is self-aware or not.
So Morton, don't cause any physical harm to your boss. Also, I think he listens, so maybe you don't want to say all these things live on the air, but
that's true. Hey Bob,
we do thank you for listening, and we value your feedback, and we value all of your feedback. Everyone listening right now, if you're in a situation like Morty's and want to reach out. We'd be happy to play it on the air and give you some horrible advice too. Mm-hmm. If you haven't subscribed though, please hit that subscribe button, or else you will never know what happens in the Morton Bob saga as inevitably it continues or doesn't. I don't know. Can't predict the future here.
He was kind of shorting out at the end there, so they might have gotten him. I don't know.
Thanks everyone for tuning in this week. We are available on all major podcasting platforms: YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. The list keeps going on, and we will be back next week for another episode. Until then,
They might be self-aware.